Basketball, and especially baseball. Best school in America, Pro Pipeline. What are you going to do about it?
Let me ask you a question. Where was he last year when you broke your streak of 236 consecutive games with making a three? Was he on the team then?
We care about the NBA. We're all about professional basketball.
What can't Vanderbilt do, though?
Yeah.
Jeez, what a
Win the
school.
SEC.
What a
Except in baseball.
Seriously, there are plenty of storylines surrounding tonight's NBA draft. So how about we begin by discussing LaMelo Ball, because he's got plenty of confidence coming into the draft tonight. Yesterday, he told reporters that he was born to be the #1 overall pick. The confidence is warranted since many mock drafts do have LaMelo going to the Timberwolves with the top pick tonight, while some have them taking Anthony Edwards. So, Shannon, is LaMelo the best player in this draft?
Well, Skip, I would take him #1. I think the biggest thing is that for the most part, what the universal of every mock I've seen, it's been the same top three guys. It's been Edwards, it's been Wiseman, and it's been LaMelo Ball. And because this draft, Skip, they don't have a Shaq. You don't have a LeBron. You don't have a Tim Duncan. Because if somebody wanted to, you can move up to get that #1 spot. You could offer enough. When those three guys came out, there was nothing you could offer because they were viewed as transcendent, franchise-altering players.
Yep.
So, but because Melo is 6'7", 190 pounds, he can handle the ball, he can play off the ball, I would take him. Now, if Edwards had his size, he would be the #1 pick in the draft, Skip. But because he's 6'3", and he doesn't...
I think he's more 6'4" and a half,
5. You go 6'4"?
Whatever.
They list him at like 6'3".
Okay.
And because the college three, Skip, he shot 29%, you're like, ooh. And Wiseman, I like him. I love his size, Skip.
So do I.
7 foot tall, 7'5" wingspan. But, Skip, the way the NBA's played today, they don't view the big like they did in the 80s and 90s. And he could work on that, and he might eventually become, because if you remember, Skip, when Anthony Davis came out, he didn't have three-point range. Anthony Davis was a defensive specialist. I think it would average 13 and 10, 13 and 11. And something he worked and worked and worked, and now he's worked his way out to three-point range. Wiseman could eventually come that. But because there are no what they deem franchise-altering players, I would take LaMelo #1 because I can put him with D. Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, because I look like Karl Anthony Towns and Wiseman might be very, very similar in guys, Skip. So for me, yes, I would take LaMelo. And I understand, he's only played, 12 games overseas in Australia, and so there's not a whole lot of tape except, those 12 games. But I would take LaMelo #1, Skip. I believe he has possibly the potentially of the most upside, and that's what NBA scouts and general manager and everybody looks for. So I would take Melo #1.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. By default, you'd think, maybe he's the best talent. But this young man said yesterday, I was born to go #1 in this draft. I've seen and heard enough of the Ball family to the point, I think exactly the opposite. I think you, LaMelo, were not born to go #1 because, like your oldest brother, Lonzo, there's something missing in the makeup of these kids. You know how much I love Lonzo coming out of UCLA. And I remind you, Lonzo shot 41% from the college three-point line.
Right.
And I thought, here we go.
Yeah.
Lonzo got destroyed by De'Aaron Fox in a second-round NBA game one night on a Friday. What did I say? NCAA. NCAA second-round game in Memphis. But I gave him a pass because his mom had just suffered a horrendous stroke. And father and brothers could not be there to support Lonzo. So he just went ahead and toughed it out and had a rough game. And yet, as I watch LaMelo, and I only know the highlights, he's been all over the world playing basketball. There's never been a high school basketball player more traveled than this kid before the draft. He played in Lithuania. He played in his father's pro league startup out here in L.A. Then he went to prep school in Ohio for a little while. And he only played 2 years at Chino Hills in high school before his father had yanked him out of there. So you're thinking, what is he? Who is he? Then, of course, the 12 games you mentioned in Australia, in which he shot 25% from the three-point line. And once again, I'm seeing a kid He's got the weirdest, funkiest three-point shot. It's like this, some kind of a two-hand push. So with Lonzo, we had the opposite way. We had him shooting over here. And finally, last year, he finally started to rid himself of that terrible habit. But I'm seeing these kids are spoiled rotten by their father. And I enjoy their father when we have them on. But LeVar destroyed the first young man coming out, Lonzo, when he said he's going to be better than Steph Curry before he dribbled one ball in the NBA. You can't paint that big a target on that kid's back. He's taken number 2 overall by Magic Johnson. He's going to be the next Magic for the Los Angeles Lakers. And Magic predicted at the opening media session, we will raise that number 2 banner to the ceiling, right? You can't live up to that. And it crushed this kid's psyche for a while, and I think he's just now starting to play his way out of it. Again, I thought he was going to be transcendent because he has the gift of passing the basketball. Unlike, it's very rare.
Well, Skip, let me tell you why I disagree. Although they might be spoiled, and LaMelo had a Lamborghini or Ferrari at the age of 17, 18, but for you to put yourself in this position, even though you have a lot of material things, you have to give the kid some credit.
Okay, but here's my problem. Do you see killer will in these kids? Do you see hunger, urgency? Do you see obsession with domination? Do you see? I don't sense it at all. I sense that they play basketball like it's a video game in their living room where they're just lounging on the couch. That's how they approach NBA basketball. If we win, it's fine. If not, no big deal. I don't see the drive in any of these kids. And it's so odd because the father is straight out of Compton, and these kids are straight out of Chino Hills.
Well, I think the thing is, Skip, is that because we've been around LeVar so much, and we don't see the side in them that we see in LeVar. And so, but I think the thing is, for as, I guess you could say, as pampered as they've been, for have a son to go number 2 in the draft and then to possibly have a son go number 1 in the draft, Skip, I think that speaks volume. Because I look at it just like the Manning situation. Archie Manning was a made man. They went to prep school. They had the greatest life. And you get 2 sons go number 1 overall, Skip, that's saying something. So for these kids to get to where they got, given what they've been given, I think that's kudos. Okay, but it doesn't matter what your economic situation was. It matters how you were taught, what's your drive, how are you going to play with any anger, or do you have any obsession for perfection? And both the Manning kids, they came up, they were obsessed with it. Peyton was obsessed with being the greatest ever. I believe these guys were obsessed. Skip, I mean, they showed little highlights of Melo, and he dunking the ball. He got on Pampers. So he's been obsessed. I think that was their whole purpose. You know, and LeVar was basically saying, look, my boy's going to the NBA. I think they were obsessed with going to the NBA. Now, look, I think the expectations that we had for, well, you had and LeVar had for Lonzo, Skip, he could never live up to those expectations. He would literally have to be Magic Johnson in order to live up to the expectations that were placed on him. But when you look at it, like I said, it's the top 3 guys. What is it about Edwards? What is it about Weissman that you like more than what you like about Melo?
Okay. In the big picture, obviously, by far the most gifted player is LaMelo.
Right.
But he's still undisciplined gifted. He's got the passing gene in him. And Jay Bayless is trying to make a case he's a better passer than Lonzo. It's hard for me to buy that, but I haven't seen enough of him. But LaMelo is far more offensively gifted than Lonzo.
Yes.
Okay, but he reminds me of my all-time favorite college player, and I don't know if you're old enough to have seen him, but it was Pete Maravich. And he was also coached at LSU by his father, Press. So he had the greenest light you'll ever see in the history of college basketball. He would come down and just create things, both passing and shooting. We'd say, I've never seen that because he didn't. He had no checks and balances. Nobody was going to yank him out of the game if he tried that shot or that pass. And some of them worked.
Three-point shot too.
And he was shooting like 35-foot jumpers that counted 2 points.
Right.
And you'd say, I've never seen that pass. He would throw full court baseball passes. You'd say bounce passes. You'd say, where did that come from? And he would hit somebody right in the hands for a layup.
Right.
And you'd say, I've never seen such flair. but it didn't contribute to winning a championship because it's too wild, too undisciplined, and too often it doesn't work. And that's what I saw in the highlights of LaMelo. He scored, as a sophomore at Chino Hills, he scored 92 points.